was Peppy Schroeder before Nutrisystem, and this is Peppy Schroeder after Nutrisystem. Flavorless diets used to force me to cheat and fail, but the new Nutrisystem Flavor Set Point Weight Loss Program gives you all the flavor you need to succeed, plus the maintenance and support to keep your success. I lost 65 pounds 9 months ago, and I haven't gained them back.
Call now and receive 3 weeks of Nutrisystem services for just $49. We succeed where diets fail you.
KSTP, Minnesota's Weather Channel.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Strand, filling in for Bob Bruce, who was on vacation this week. For 10 years, Norma Jean Almodovar was a traffic officer with the Los Angeles Police Department, but she quit in 1982, afraid she was losing both her sanity and her self-respect. Norma Jean then became a high-priced call girl in Beverly Hills. Susan Nadler grew up in an upper-middle-class family and had all the advantages and privileges of other well-to-do girls, but at the age of 26, she was caught in Mexico trying to smuggle 500 kilos of hashish. Both women served time in prison for their crimes, and today they tell us why they traded the security of conservative lifestyles for those of crime and risk. Next on Twin Cities Live. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to all of you. This is a show that I think will wake you up on a Monday morning. Norma Jean, I'd like to start with you this morning. The first question. You had what many people consider to be a traditional job for 10 years, and you left it for a life of crime. Why?
Well, I think it was a step up, to be quite honest with you, because after 10 years on the Los Angeles Police Department, I was working the Hollywood division, and the Hollywood cops were involved in all kinds of nefarious activity, and I felt like I was working for the Blue Mafia. And I really had to leave. I couldn't work for them anymore. And to me, becoming a call girl, which to me was an ethical, honest job, was better than working for the Los Angeles Police Department for another 10 years. I just could not stand what was going on there anymore.
Give us some specific examples. What could you not stand?
Okay, well, the Hollywood cops had a burglary ring, a murder-for-hire ring. They were having sex with underage girls, young girls from the age of 10 years old, as young as 10 years old. A yacht theft ring. They were dealing drugs. These were the cops, not the people they were arresting. And I thought this was very wrong. I couldn't say anything about it while I was still there, because when you are in the system, if you criticize it, you are punished, as are many cops. And there's a lot of very good, honest cops on the police department, but they're stuck in a position where they can't criticize. They have to look the other way. And I just couldn't look the other way anymore.
It sounds like you're saying you made the decision that I might as well not fight them. I'll join them and enter into a life of crime yourself.
Well, see, now I don't think that private consensual adult activity, because I believe this is my body. It does not belong to the state. The state may not make moral choices for me. And I don't believe that private consensual adult activity should be a crime. I know that 10 years ago in California, the oral copulation was still a felony between consenting adults. And every cop I knew was a felon. They may not have been a good felon, but under California law, they were still felons.
You say that you became a high-priced call girl.
Yes.
Let's define that a little bit for this audience and the audience at home. I mean, who are we talking about? How much money are we talking about?
Well, I was a high-priced but part-time call girl, because I only saw from 1 to 5 clients a week. I made anywhere from $200 to $500 an hour. And then in one case, I saw one client, I made $10,000 in one night, and I didn't even have sex with my client. So I guess that was probably the top-end scale of prostitution.
Are these people that we would recognize or know of?
Oh, yes. You probably see them on TV, their names in the newspaper, politicians, actors, singers, comedians. These kinds of men were my clients, and I actually was quite honored that I would go out to dinner with these men and to expensive restaurants and sit there and spend an evening with them, learning a lot of things about their life, about business in general, and on top of that, they paid me, and I was very honored that they did that.
How did you get into this particular job? I mean, did you have the former contacts or know someone to go to say, hey, I want to do this?
Yes. I met a call girl, or several of them, when I was working on the police department. Of course, I knew that there was a vice cop who was married to a call girl, and of course, a lot of the call girls were still dating cops. They still are. That helps keep them out of prison. But anyway, I met one, and she introduced me to her madam when I decided that I wanted to go into that business.
And tell me, what did your salary go from when you quit your job on the police force and became a call girl, annual salary?
Well, as I said, I was only a part-time prostitute, so I didn't make lots and lots of money. I didn't go over $50,000 a year because I wanted to do other things. In fact, prostitution gave me the opportunity to do all the things I wanted. By working from 1 to 5 hours a week, I had lots of other time to do my writing, my painting. I make dolls, I sew, you know, I do a lot of these kinds of things, and it gave me the time to do that.
Susan Nadler, when did your life of crime begin?
Well, I was raised in an upper middle class family in Pittsburgh, and I had all the advantages and comforts of this lifestyle, and my father had a business, my mother was an artist. But I think that a lot of us that were raised in the 60s, particularly, with parents that were brought up in the Depression, we were prohibited from experiencing all sides of life. They tried to overprotect us to a large degree. And so crime became something very fascinating and thrilling to me. When I was about 10 years old, I began shoplifting, which is not a major felon, but I began taking little things from the 5 and dime. Things that I didn't need, things that I wanted, like eye makeup, which I never wore until I even went to college. Then I would say I didn't really get involved with crime until I was living in the Mideast. I had a scholarship there to finish my college degree, and I began smuggling hashish out of a yeshiva, which is a religious school, where King David was buried and the room of the Last Supper was held. We were smuggling it back to the United States in religious books. And that was where I really began experimenting with crime. And why I went into crime, I think, was because when you grew up in the 60s were a very turbulent time. Our greatest political leaders were assassinated. We were involved in a war that we didn't believe in, and drugs became very involved in all of this. And although drugs were illegal, we weren't thinking of the long-term effects that drugs had with be-ins and love-ins. And it was very much in the media, and we were all very much media children. So it wasn't necessarily that I felt I was participating in crime. I felt I was participating in something exciting, something illegal.
How far did your criminal career go, and where did it end?
After Jerusalem, where I was busted in Los Angeles, I unluckily didn't have to spend time in prison because there was a network of people trying to help young people that were in trouble then. I was living in Los Angeles and participating in the real LA lifestyle, the real hypocritical LA lifestyle, which was wearing $150 shirts and eating salads in the smog on Sunset and talking about health foods and God and doing lots of drugs. And I ended up backing a deal where we brought in a lot of hashish from Morocco via La Paz, Mexico, which was a duty-free port. And we got busted there smuggling. We got caught smuggling 500 kilos of hashish. And I was really the first case that the DEA ever worked on in Mexico. And we were busted in a very dramatic way with 30 police and federales and FBI throwing us up against cars and frisking us, and I had a potential 27-year sentence.
But you didn't serve out that sentence
No, I
entirely.
served 4.5 months.
And tell us about your experiences in prison. When you made that call to Mom and Dad to say, hi, I'm in jail in Mexico, Mom, what was the condition that you were in?
Well, I was in a horrible condition. I had typhoid fever and hepatitis. Mexico has no facilities for women. And so I was thrown in with a lot of Mexican women that were prostitutes. There was a tiny, tiny cell. There was no water. There was no bathroom. There were rats. There were spiders. It was the classic prison overseas scene. And it was devastating. I was later moved to a solitary confinement cell in the prison, in the hospital. Because my passport had been issued in Jerusalem, they thought that I was the head of the ring from Morocco. The Mexicans were not too clever about understanding that Jerusalem was in a whole other place than Morocco.
And were you truly in solitary confinement when you were in that cell, or did you have relationships with other people?
I was in solitary confinement. I had guards that guarded me for 12-hour periods at a time. Armed guards, but I did have an affair with one of the Mexican police officials who was the head of the federales. And it was not necessarily an affair that I thought would get me out of prison. It was something that was life-strengthening. It was the only thing that made me feel alive at that time. And I really cared for him. He wanted me to stay there after I got out of prison and live with him on a farm in Durango, but of course it didn't work out that way.
So what began as life in an upper middle class family ended having an affair in solitary confinement in Mexico with one of the heads of law enforcement.
Right.
That is a bizarre story.
It was a bizarre story, but the point of the whole story is that women are entering the criminal world twice as quickly as they ever did before. And not just women that are doing welfare fraud. It used to be that half of the women in prison were black. Now half of the women in prison are white, and only 38% of the women in prison are black. And there are a lot of women from middle-class homes that wanted the same thrills and the same power that men have always had. Men have been getting away with white-collar crime for years, acceptable white-collar crime, and women wanted in. Women wanted equality, and they are now getting it. And just because somebody looks nice does not mean that they are not capable of getting into crime. Just because someone is white and upper middle class and educated, of the 50 women that I interviewed, almost all of them were educated and came from upper class families. And they're all getting into crime now. So it's not how someone looks, it's who they really are.
And yet, you can't tell me that all of your friends have ended up on similar career paths as yourself. What was the motivation for each of you? Norma Jean, what was the motivation?
To become a call girl? Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, when I was on the police department, under the law, I was already a prostitute. I was just a very cheap prostitute because the law is a lewd act for money or other consideration. Every time I would sit on a sergeant's lap and blow in his ear, I was a prostitute. I was just very cheap. When I would go out on dates with cops, most of them were married cops, and I would end up back home in bed with them, and they'd say, "Oh, honey, I got to go home. My wife is waiting for me." I wasn't even there for my own sexual pleasure, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong, and I felt very used and cheap. When I became a prostitute, I felt at least I was getting value for value. And for me, it was, as I said, it was as a career step up. I thought I was, and I still do, feel that I was doing a much better thing than I did in the police department because, first of all...
How much, let me ask you this, how much did a life of glamour have to do with it?
Not a lot. It was just simply that it gave me career options, it gave me time, and it gave me the money to do all the other things in my life I wanted to do.
Norma Jean, I'm sorry, Susan, tell me, what was the motivation for you?
I wanted to experience something that was thrilling, something that was out of the ordinary. I did not want to be closed into the box that my parents had planned out for me. Graduate college, marry a nice man, settle down, have children. That is not what I wanted. I wanted other experiences. I wanted to do what I saw men doing. You know, the crime is very glamorized in this country. And I would like to make the point that my book does not glamorize crime because it presents the facts of who the women are, what the crime was that they were arrested for, and how long they spend in prison. None of the women I tell the stories of are floating down the Riviera in a yacht. They are all doing time. But back then, it seemed something very thrilling and very exciting, and I wanted out of the middle-class life.
Were you starved for attention?
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. I think that when you're younger, when you grow up in a middle-class, upper middle-class family, and you are good, you do not get that much attention. But when you are bad, they pay a tremendous amount of attention to you, and it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The worse that you are, the more attention that you get. And I think that I really wanted attention. I wanted my father's attention particularly.
We are talking with two women here, and we'll pick up on that point in just a minute, how much you wanted your father's attention, both of whom have had a life in crime, both of whom have served time in jail, and both of whom are here today to answer your questions, live on Twin Cities Live.
Diet soft drink with lemon.
You can't beat the taste of Diet Sprite. Budget Power, the home improvement expert, brings you store-wide savings during the spring fix-up sale. Save on GE Miser floodlight bulbs. Spreads 150 watts of light for the cost of only 120 watts. Brighten your bath with decorative toilet seats from Mayfair in a rainbow of colors and design. American Bath's elegant and decorative faucets are on sale, featuring brass, porcelain, cut crystal, and solid wood handles. The night comes alive with the warm glow of low-voltage accent lighting from Lunalight by Toro. Save more during the spring fix-up sale at Budget Power, the home improvement expert.
Come exercise, lose inches, and feel better at Easy Trim and Fitness Centers. Their tables are designed to stretch and flex your muscles while toning and firming every area of your body, like stomach, hips, and buttocks. Easy Trim features concepts and motion tables for men and women of all ages, even for those with physical limitations. A 1-hour session can have all the benefits of hours of strenuous floor exercises. Visit Easy Trim as often as you'd like. There's no membership fee. Call now to arrange a free demonstration at the Easy Trim and Fitness Center in either Blaine, Cambridge, or Pine City.
Now, there's one more reason to shop with confidence at Best Buy Superstores. It's Best Buy's incredible 125% lifetime price guarantee. Now, when you purchase any item from Best Buy, we'll guarantee the lowest price for as long as you own the product. If you find the same merchandise advertised or sold for less, Best Buy will refund the difference, plus another 25% of the difference. Come to Best Buy for full details about this incredible offer. Why settle for anything less?
Child abuse. It is one of the most major problems to be brought out in the open in recent years. But with all of the attention, why has it risen 55% in 4 years? We'll try to find this out next Thursday on Twin Cities Live when we ask the parents themselves why they would abuse their own child. Call 641-1298 for free tickets as we honor National Child Abuse Prevention Month and attempt to put a stop to this drastic crime. We will hear from members of Parents Anonymous, which is a program designed for treatment, intervention, and prevention. In other words, to save lives and to save families. Again, that's next Thursday on Twin Cities Live. Let me just pick up on a point that we left off a minute ago. Susan, you said that maybe you wanted attention from your dad, and that's what got you involved in crime.
Well, I had always written. I've written since I was 5 years old. And as time went on, I won poetry. I went to a private girls' school, and I won the poetry prize junior and senior year. But this did not seem to evoke much attention from my father. It seemed that the only way I could get attention was to be provocative and to do things that I was not permitted to do. And with a lot of the women whose stories I tell, I find that this was also the case, that when you are good in the middle class, you do not receive attention, but when you are bad, you get a lot of attention. And it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy of the bad girl, who starts off good but goes bad, and when she's bad, she gets lots of attention.
We have a question from a caller now. Good morning, caller. You're on Twin Cities Live.
Good morning. And my question is for Norma Jean, and she claims that she was on the Los Angeles Police Department.
That's true, yes.
Yes, and when did she go through the police academy?
I was a civilian traffic officer, and I went in 1972.
I see, and that's not part, she's not a sworn police officer.
That's right.
And she
That's
never
right.
worked the streets.
No, yes, I did work the streets. Oh, yes. I was a traffic officer. I worked at nighttime. I drove a squad car. I worked from 6 at night to 2 in the morning.
Well,
but I was a civilian traffic officer.
I'll tell you that you did not work on the Los Angeles Police Department as a sworn
Yes, I
police
did. I didn't work as a sworn police officer. I never said I did. I worked as a civilian traffic officer for the Los Angeles Police Department. I worked the Hollywood Division, and I worked at night, and I drove a police car.
Caller, let me ask you, where are you calling from, and what motivated you to call today? What's the point you want to make?
Because I am a Los Angeles police officer. I'm a sworn officer. I work Northeast Division in Los Angeles, and I'm here on a business trip.
Well, let me ask you, is it anything close to what Norma Jean has described here today?
As far as what incidents that she claims has happened?
In terms of the force being riddled with corruption, really, and all kinds of abuse taking place on the force itself, is that how you see it?
No, that is not true. If there's any corruption or if there's any problems, it's handled by internal affairs, and it's dealt with as in any other business. People are disciplined, and if they are if the chief sees that a person has to be fired for actions that they've taken, then they're fired.
Norma Jean, you seem to think, however, that people just close their eyes
Yes,
to
I
the
do.
things that they
Yes.
witnessed.
I think, in fact, this officer is closing his eyes, too, because if he doesn't even read the paper and knows what's going on. When Ron Venegas and Jack Myers were caught in the Hollywood burglary ring, Jack Myers unfortunately met his demise the morning he went to testify. And a few weeks later, Sandra Bowers, who was a street prostitute, was also killed. She was found stabbed to death in a motel room. And so when Ron Venegas went on the stand to testify against 12 other police officers who were involved in this burglary ring, none of them were convicted because there was only one witness. Ron Venegas testified under oath that he had committed over 100 burglaries, he and his partner. He was given a 16-month suspended sentence and 3 months probation. And everything that I have talked about police corruption has been in the newspapers. Police officers have been arrested, and unfortunately they're not being punished.
Tell us, Norma Jean, how much time did you spend in prison, and describe for us what a typical day was like for you?
Okay, well, I was convicted of a felony. That's pandering. Pandering is simply to encourage a person to commit an act of prostitution. And in California, it carries a mandatory 3 to 6 year prison term on the first offense with no prior convictions, unlike rape, robbery, assault, mayhem, and even murder, for which you can get probation. After I was convicted of pandering, I was sent to state prison for 50 days to be studied to see if I'm dangerous to society, and you'll all be very happy to know that I'm not, and I have state certification to prove that. And so then I was given 3 years probation, but now just recently the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office appealed my probation on the grounds that my crime is worse than rape or robbery, and that I ought to be in prison because I'm still writing a book about police corruption, which they do not like. And there were 57 references to the fact I was writing a book in the appellate brief. And on March 25th, my probation sentence was overturned, and the appellate court decided I must go back to state prison for 3 to 6 years for the crime of pandering.
Hi, I'm Michelle Horton, and I attend Genesis 2 for Women. And I wanted to ask Susan a question about her time in prison. I wanted to know, how did you get off doing 4.5 months?
I got off because in Mexico you are guilty until proven innocent. And they had to prove that I was guilty of what I did. And because my name was not on the package, there was no way. I was accused of 4 things: acquisition, importation, transportation, and possession. And you have to understand that in Mexico the laws are entirely different than in the United States. And I wasn't found guilty. I was found, they couldn't find me guilty, so they had to let me go. That's how I got off.
Tell us what Genesis 2 is, and then tell us what you think about your hearing from these women.
Genesis 2 is a group therapy treatment for offending women, and it helps women to acknowledge their mistakes and try to get their life back together. And it's a very good program and educational, and it helps the mothers and children, and it helps the criminal justice and maternal guidance women.
Do you hear some similarities to what I presume to be your experience then as to what you're hearing from either of these women?
Yes, it's very similar.
What?
For one thing, it's similar because the women there, some women there are there for the same things, and
motivated in the same way, starved for attention, as Susan pointed out.
Yeah, it's some women there for that, and they're there for all kinds of reasons, but it is very similar.
You know, I found that a lot of the women were really not motivated by desperation for money. A lot of the women, and I tried to interview particularly middle class and upper middle class women. There was a woman that I interviewed called Terry Saunders, who was from California, and she had 2 college degrees. Her husband was an architect. She lives in Santa Monica in a big house. She had 2 sons. She was head of the PTA. She had her own business for paralegals, and she was working for a man that was a contractor in San Fernando Valley. And as she was working for him, she was running the office, so she received all the phone calls. She noticed that he never made his final payment to any of his subcontractors, to the man that did the cement job, or to the man that was the plumber, and they were all calling her for their money. So she started forging his signature initially just to pay these people off. And as time went on, she started embezzling money, and not because she needed the money. She really did not need the money. There were other motivations. she told me that she wanted to come off the pedestal. She was sick of having everyone look at her as the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect boss. All the responsibilities in life were placed on her. And this is kind of like the downside of the women's movement, that women wanted equality and they wanted the same successes that men have always known. But in the meantime, they found that they were getting the same stresses that men had always known. So she ended up taking the money, and in court she said, I'm on trial here, she said, for embezzling money. She said, but he's the biggest criminal that there is. So it was not financial that motivated her.
Do you think what you did was all right?
What do you mean all right?
By what we feel about our children, you know, and all the drugs that are going down and everything, you think it was all right for you to get off?
Well, first of all, let me say that this happened 15 years ago. I was 25 or 26 years old. I'm 40 years old now. And I am sorry that I put my family through so much trouble. The drugs, by the way, that I smuggled in were totally taken by the Mexican police force, and we couldn't even find them again when we went to trial for evidence. So the drugs were not distributed. I did major trouble to myself. I hurt my liver and my heart irreparably. My health will never be the same. So I feel that I paid for what I did and the pain that I put my family through, and in the time it took me to readjust to life, which was a long time. Plus, I went.
Do you have children?
No.
What would you tell them if you did about your experiences?
I would be very honest with them about everything. I wouldn't try to hide anything from them. And I would let them try to see, I mean, all you have to do is turn on television now, and you can see everything that's going on in life. Just turn on the evening news. You see crack, you see sex. There's no hiding anything from kids these days. And I felt that a lot of things were hidden from me when I was growing up, and so they became more attractive. As to whether I think that it's right, I do not think that drugs are right, and we know that crime doesn't pay. That was the point of my book. But I don't feel that I should have served the rest of my life in prison, because what I did got me to where I am today, and I would never be able to be having this discussion or have brought this issue to light. I do want people to know that women that are involved in crime are not all off the streets. They are not all horrible women wielding pistols. A lot of them are educated, well-spoken women. And these are the women that are going to be making more advances in crime.
We have another caller. Let's go ahead. Good morning. You're on Twin Cities Live.
Good morning. I just want to say I want to give these two ladies a lot of credit for what they can say, what they've done, and talk about it. But I've got a question for Susan. Did you find that you were closer with your family before the incident or after?
I'm much closer now with my parents than I ever was, because I had been so rebellious when I was growing up. My parents were not that thrilled with me, and particularly after prison, I went through a major problem with my family, and they didn't talk to me for a long time. I had to go back to Pittsburgh, which is where I was from, after I got out of prison, and I had a lot of trouble with my family for years. Now they're very proud of me. They're happy that I'm publishing. They're happy that I'm, doing productive work, and they're happy that I've brought this issue to light.
We are talking here with two women, both of whom have had experience in lives of crime, and they are here today to share their stories, very different stories, but there are some similarities, and we are going to continue our conversation right after this.
Come, feel the freshness. Tropicana Pure Premium shades your morning with a taste so fresh, so pure, so natural. Tropicana Pure Premium. Only Florida oranges. With nothing added, nothing taken away. The taste could only be one. Tropicana. Feel the freshness. It's pure Tropicana.
At MIM, careers happen.
The teachers spent a lot of time with you because they want you to get out there and do your best.
You get the chance to put what you learn in the classroom into use.
I had 3 offers out of 4 interviews, and I had the feedback within a month.
At the Medical Institute of Minnesota, it's your choice. Medical assistant or laboratory technician, dental assistant, veterinary technician. Call for our free brochure, 800-331-2000. Call 800-331-2000.
The law offices of Mesh, Besher, Singer, and Spence. A good firm to have on your side if you've been hurt in an accident.
If you've been injured in an accident and believe someone else is at fault, we'd like to help you. Without an attorney to take your side, you may have to pay much of your own way, and that isn't fair. But we can help, and you can see us for free. In fact, we're paid only if we win your claim and you collect. It's the only fair way.
Meshbesher, Singer, and Spence, on your side.
For people on the go, it's the smart thing to do. Get your Q gasoline and grocery specials too.
Always wondered what the Q stood for, but since I began stopping here, I decided it's for quick.
It's quantity.
It's quality.
Quintessential.
What?
It's the quintessential superette. It's got everything. Gas, groceries, neat people, neat store, and super specials. Quintessential, see?
Smart kid.
For people on the go, oh, it's the smart thing to do.
IQ, do you?
You're pregnant. You know your waistline will increase, but how can you keep the rest of your body in shape? How can you control your weight gain at a time when it can really get out of hand? Well, come on down Friday, April 10th, and we will show you how. Put on your maternity sweatsuits and take part in a medically approved exercise program for the mothers-to-be. Reduce the painful quirks of pregnancy, the calf cramps, the back pain, the fatigue, while increasing muscle tone and energy. And it does not just stop there. If you have just had a baby, you may still feel those conditions and also want to be toning up. You'll want to come on down, too. Call 641-1298 for free tickets to Twin Cities Live Friday, April 10th, when we do special shape-ups for those 9 months and more. There it is, the latest edition of Penthouse, and this month it does feature Norma Jean's story, this month in Penthouse. You had a question here, sir.
Yeah, my name's Sheldon. I work for Amicus. We're a nonprofit. We match friends with inmates in prison. I'd like to ask either of the two women, what do you think is a key factor for an offender to stay out of prison once he gets out? Conversely, what would be the factor that would most make them go back?
Well, for me, I have found that when someone gets out of prison, it's especially women, it's very difficult for them to get jobs because they immediately have records. And no one wants to hire them if they have a record. So it's, it's very difficult for them. Also, it's hard to reintegrate into your family. A lot of women continue to have the stigma of the bad girl applied to them. They cannot shake that. Society has got to realize that crime is part of life in this century right now, and they've got to start having self-esteem. Women who are in crime, when people are victimized, they think the criminal is really out to hurt them. Basically, the criminal woman is just hurting herself. And I think women need counseling. I think they need help to find out that they really are good people and to find out that people really do care about them. I think that that's the most important thing, is to get self-love. Because without self-love, you'll continue to do destructive things to hurt yourself.
Norma Jean, how do you think your family influenced your decision to become a call girl?
Well, I mean, they didn't influence. I have 14 brothers and sisters, and I'm from a fundamental Baptist family. And they really played no role in it, except that I didn't want to hurt my mother or anything, and I went back to her to tell her what I was going to be doing. I told her, number one, I was in prostitution. Number two, I was going to be very outspoken. I was writing a book. I would be on television. I would be talking about it. And
what did she say?
Well, my mother is a very, very understanding woman, very Christian, if you will. She does not judge me. She believes that's God's job to do. And she said, well, I don't approve of your lifestyle. You know that, but I still love you. As far as the rest of my brothers and sisters are concerned, they've been very, very, very open about it. They're very proud of the stand that I've taken, and of course, because of the book that I've been writing, they're very proud that I have been doing that and talking about it and having the courage to go out and go public about it.
You have said that there was some sexual abuse in your family as you were growing up.
Yes.
How do you think that relates to your decision to go on into a career of sex?
Well, okay. I have 5 other sisters, and they were all equally sexually abused by my father, and none of them have gone into a life of prostitution. I did not go into prostitution until I was 31 years of age. I don't think that had anything to do with my decision.
Let me go ahead. You've got a question here?
Yes, for Susan. Was you doing drugs when you were smuggling?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was. Drugs were a part of my life. And it's interesting because the women whose stories I tell in the book, let's say, the ones that are involved in street crime, which is the confidence game. There was a girl in my book who came from a very wealthy family in Spain and grew up with nannies, etc. And at the age of 16, she was scaling her neighbor's walls in black tights and gloves. And this was in Miami. She was also using drugs. But the women that I've seen that are involved in corporate crime are not using drugs. Many of them drink, which seems to be much more acceptable than doing drugs. But yeah, I was using drugs.
We have a phone call question or two. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, my question is to Norma Jean. Are you concerned about making what you've done seem glamorous to the young girls that are on the street right now, the young
Am I
teenage
concerned
girls?
about it? Yes, because I don't want young women into this business. I think that they're too young to be in a business that they don't even know their own sexuality yet. One of the things I am working for, of course, is decriminalization, because I'd like to see the police be able to go after people who hire underage people, which they do not do now. If prostitution were decriminalized, it would not take away the laws against having sex with minors. That is still called statutory rape, and I would like to see the police and their resources be allocated towards taking care of that problem.
Are you still practicing as a call girl today?
Unfortunately, no. And I say unfortunately because I would really like to be back in my profession. I found it to be a very nurturing career. People don't think of it that way, but I did. I found that when I touched my clients and held them, I was doing something very nurturing. It was not simply sex. In fact, most of it was not sexual at all.
Why are you not practicing?
Because I am a convicted felon. I am on probation. If I work, I will go to prison. Of course, I'm facing prison anyway, so now I don't know.
And you are actively working to make prostitution
Yes, I
legal
work with Coyote, Catharsis. I work with women's groups to help young women get out of prostitution because they don't belong in this business.
Now, you are married.
Yes.
What does your husband think? And what did he think when you were practicing?
Well, we've been together for 12 years, and I left the police department in 1982. He knew that I was going into the business. It was my decision to make. He felt simply that if I did not become hard and jaded, that he had no objections because we understood each other sexually. And that was his only concern, that I take care of myself. And of course, I told him, number one, being out in the streets of Los Angeles Hollywood division at nighttime until 2 o'clock in the morning alone, I was in a lot greater danger than working as a call girl through a madam with clients who were well known to the madam. And the other thing is that if I hadn't become hard and jaded and bitter after 10 years on the police department, I didn't see how making people feel good for money could make me feel hard and jaded.
Did he encourage you? I mean, would he go up at a cocktail party and say,
no,
yes, my wife
felony.
is a high-priced call girl, and what does your wife do?
No, encouraging, of course, that's the problem. That's a felony in California. He didn't encourage or discourage. It was just my profession, and that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, good enough. And I think we've got some more questions. You had one here. What's your question?
My question is directed to Susan. You mentioned a few minutes ago something about the difficulty in re-entering society.
Yes.
I wish you'd comment more about that and how hard it was or easy to get back with your friends and things like that.
Well, for me, because it occurred such a long time ago, and because I had been in prison in a foreign country, my parents tried to hide what had happened to me. So when I got back to Pittsburgh, most people really didn't know what had happened to me at all. It was in 1972. Well, let's say there's a woman in my book, who Alexandra, who was a computer criminal. She was able to get cards, business account cards from credit card companies from a friend of hers that worked in the company, and tap into the company and go in and get money out up to $1 million from the banks. Now, she had initially been in prison for a very small crime, and when she got out, she was working at a hospital. And everything was going fine. She had a terrific job at the hospital, and then they found out she had a record. And suddenly they wanted to blame every crime that had happened in that hospital on her. They blamed all the stealing that had happened, everything that had gone down, and she got dismissed from the hospital, and nothing, she hadn't done anything at all. This made her more bitter towards society. Whether this was just a rationalization for her to return to crime, I'm not sure. She claims that she never would have gone back into crime if she'd been able to continue her life without being hassled because of her past. So I think that when someone is an ex-con or an ex-felon, it is very difficult for them to get back into society without having everyone judge them. It seems as though people want you to change, but they want you to stay in prison for the rest of your life to pay for your crime.
We are talking with two women, both of whom have different ideas. One feels that she went down the wrong path in crime. The other feels that what she has been doing should not be a crime. We will continue our conversations with Susan Nadler and Norma Jean right after this.
Set your alarm to watch Eyewitness News Morning tomorrow.
You will see how...
Become a medical assistant at Lakeland Academy. Start a career in the medical field, helping others. Be a professional. In 8 short months, you'll be ready for work.
I got a job. I got a job. I got a job.
We'll help you find a job when you graduate. Call 827-5656. Lakeland Medical Dental Academy. Call 827-5656. Call now, 827-5656.
Nobody does your look great clips like we do. We do a look that's right for you. Great clips, that's right. Nobody does you like we do. Great styling, great clips.
Lonely looks expensive.
Nobody does you like we do.
To a lot of us, a trampoline looks like a lot of fun, kind of like a game. But to this young gymnast, the trampoline represents years of hard work and now success. 16-year-old Tim Hess of Bloomington is currently the national AAU champion on the trampoline. That's a goal he's worked toward for the last 6 years. Please join me, Ruth Spencer, on Eyewitness News at 6 when we meet this special young athlete who really understands that hard work and success don't happen overnight. This week's Incredible Kid on Eyewitness News.
Where do you go when you need to talk with someone?
Or if you need some help or encouragement.
We all need to feel we're loved, that someone really cares about us.
If you're looking for new hope and have been waiting to hear some good news,
come and be a part of a family that cares about you. You'll find new hope, faith, and love at New Hope Baptist Church of South Minneapolis. Call us at 822-5537. 822-5537.
Good Girls Gone Bad is the name of the book that Susan Nadler has written. Susan, let me ask you, do you think crime is an addiction?
I think that it's very difficult once you've experienced a certain thrill of crime, a certain illegal thrill, to go back to a 9-to-5 job. For me, it was lucky because I had always written, and I was able to duplicate the thrill of crime in my writing. But I don't know necessarily about other women. I can say that some of the women in crime told me that when they were getting away with some of their crimes, they experienced an orgasm. So it was sexually very titillating to them.
Good question.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I don't, Norma Jean, see how you can say that your sexual abuse had nothing to do with your crimes at all.
Well, I don't, because by the time I was 31 years of age, I had totally resolved those problems. That was not my reason. Most young women who are sexually abused go into prostitution at early ages, like 13, 14, 15 years old. That's when they're still going through this sexual abuse. By the time I was 31 years of age, I'd already gone all past those stages, and to me now the choice of going into prostitution was clearly that. It was a choice. It was not something to get away from sexual abuse.
Okay, how do you feel that you went through those stages? Did you go through therapy? Did you get help?
Yes, I did. I went through therapy, yes, and mostly I went through therapy because of the police department, the stress I was suffering there.
I'd just like to say that I had a drug addiction, and that involved me in prostitution and theft and things of that nature. And without that addiction, I have no interest in being involved in those things again. I think it's a really hard way to live for most people, and that your experience is somewhat isolated.
Yes, well, I don't think my experience is isolated. I think certainly it was a different experience than some women experience. I'd also like to say that, first of all, I have never done drugs. I don't do drugs. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes, and I never have. So those were not motives for me for working in prostitution. And most of the women that I know in prostitution as call girls do not take drugs because it is, number one, it's a waste of their money, and they have better things to do with it than that.
What do you think about the idea of legalizing prostitution based on your experience and what you've heard from her?
I really don't know, because my experience with it has been that it's a very destructive thing for people. And
for you?
For me, and
you.
for a lot of the people, all of the people that I came in contact with, which was a lot of people. And I think that the money you're talking about and the lifestyle you're talking about is a smaller number of people than most people that are in prostitution.
Street?
No, I worked inside, and you know, I never walked the street, but and I too made a lot of money. I spent a lot of money, and I just think that, you know, it's a negative experience for most of the people that I came into contact with.
Tell us, what was your motivation?
Money for drugs.
I heard some applause back here. Stand up here and tell me what you think.
I think it's true that it is self-destructive behavior. I mean, I don't
for
think
whom?
for yourself.
For you, perhaps, but for me, it was a nurturing profession. I felt very, very satisfied by making people feel good instead of giving them a ticket, having them yell at me. Instead, I was making someone feel good for a change. And when I would leave that job, I was very happy because I had left a human being happy.
Go ahead.
But how does that make you feel?
Made me feel wonderful. To make somebody else feel good is not degrading to me. That was my experience.
Let me go ahead. You have been making some faces back here. Why?
I think it's self-destructive behavior for the trick and the prostitute. You're both looking to get your needs met in places, in wrong places.
What about that? That you are looking in the wrong places to get your needs met?
Well, see, I didn't find it that was not my experience. My experience was that there are a lot of men out there who have needs that need to be met. There are divorced men who have gone through painful divorces who are not able to go out and maintain normal relationships for a period of their life. I felt I was a bridge between one relationship and the other. I felt it was a very necessary kind of relationship for these men. I had some clients who were divorced and could not remarry because of their traumatic situation, and I felt for them I was a fantasy woman that helped them at least have some kind of sexual or whatever kind of relationship in their life that they would not otherwise have.
Didn't it ever occur to you that you might get, a serious disease like AIDS or anything like that? And how did it affect you?
Well, first of all, when I was on the police department, I was having far more promiscuous relationships with cops, and I did not know the first thing about sexually transmitted diseases. When I started working as a prostitute, I learned everything there was to know, or at least everything you could find medically on sexually transmitted diseases, and I made it my business to know how to take care of myself, which is something I never did when I was having sex with cops.
You have served some time here in Stillwater. Tell us, do you think that these women have addressed the key points that you would address in terms of what it takes to make sure you don't go back to a crime?
Well, yes and no. This, I guess, mainly would be for Susan since she has done time. It seems to me when I was in, I had a friend, a volunteer friend from Amicus.
Can you tell us what you were in for?
Sure. I was in for an assault charge. And what surprised me about it was the different lifestyle that people on the streets lived than what I did. I've committed other crimes in the past and been arrested. And it seemed like until I had a friend who was someone who was quote-unquote straight or normal, I really didn't understand that world, or that existed. And I also felt like you did with the high and the thrill.
Yeah, but I think that the most important thing is finding a support group or therapy. It's very difficult in prison because there's so many women in the prisons and there's so few therapists available. So there are a lot of women that all need help. The best thing that I have found are the support groups, the AA, the Narcotics Anonymous, the CA, and I found an interesting thing called money addiction. I find that there was a woman in the book who had come from a really very wealthy family who had been abused, and what had happened to her is that her father withheld money, and so money became what she wanted whenever her buttons were pushed. So they have a new group now called Money Addiction. And I find that these support groups and therapy are the only thing that can reinforce people's identities. And unless they have self-esteem, they go right back into crime.
And we will be right back.
Can I have you and a white living room, too? Something updated, a little more like me. New sofa, pastel oriental, glass, brass. Oh, but how will that look with antiques? Probably perfect.
Ethan Allen, for the interiors of your mind.
There's a thought that says it is indeed fortunate to have one's cup runneth over. Fortunate, unless your cup runneth over onto your silk blouse, your fine linen tablecloth, your wool slacks, whatever, wherever, which is precisely why we make Scotchgard Fabric Protector. It keeps ordinary spills from becoming extraordinary stains on virtually any fabric. Use Scotchgard Fabric Protector and let your cup runneth over.
Worldwide sponsor, 1988 Olympic Games.
Firm, fit filly seeks the dark horse of a rare
agreed. I won't be roped in by the usual. Must be restless and rebellious, but a real natural to keep this thoroughbred in racing form.
Rebellious, new taste of Diet Dr. Pepper. Throw your diet a curve.
Now with all natural flavors.
Now the fresh taste of Vandy Camps has a new ring to it. Finally, fish from a microwave that's crunchy on the outside and moist and tender inside. The secret's in the crisping sheet. If this sounds good, wait till you taste it. Vandy Camps, the freshest ideas in frozen fish.
Shop for Vandy Camps at your local Super Value store.
Mothers and fathers, how important is it to be home with that newborn baby of yours? Important enough to lose your job? Many working parents are faced with that dilemma of jeopardizing their jobs if they take months off after the birth of their infant to care for it. Now, that time is most crucial for building a bond with your child, but it is also a time when your temporary replacement at work could become permanent. Should companies be required to let the mother or father of a newborn take months off and still guarantee the same position when the parents return? Call 641-1298 for free tickets to participate in our studio audience tomorrow and tell us what you think. Should new mothers be allowed to take leave longer than the doctors say they needed to just to be home with the babies? Is it really necessary for the fathers to take off too? Come down tomorrow when we battle this issue of parental leave.
I don't exactly have a question. I have more of a comment. Okay. As I look at these two young people, I'm glad I've met them, and it's a whole new ballgame for me because it isn't the type of life I've been in, had anything to do with. My impression is Susan here seems to feel her life before was not. It was exciting, but it was a mistake, and so she's learned from it. Okay, and the other young lady, she feels that it's okay to be a prostitute, and I don't know anything about that, so I don't know what my questions are. Tomorrow I'll know.
You're just surprised by what you've heard today?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you support Norma Jean?
I'm not sure. I'd have to hear more about it, I think, but I probably don't.
I wanted to know if Norma Jean is afraid to go back to Hollywood after what she said about the police department. I would be.
Well, I would be too. Actually, I live near the Hollywood station, and of course the Hollywood cops or the LAPD as a whole are not very fond of me. There are an awful lot of very good cops that are there that are very supportive. Last year I ran for lieutenant governor in California, and there's a lot of cops that voted for me because they know that they cannot go out there and talk about what's going on, and I say it for them. And one of the reasons I'm so public is because I don't want to end up in the trunk of a car or having a fatal accident like Jack Myers did when he testified against the other cops. But
do you think that's a real possibility? Are you really worried about that?
I was until I became very public. Now I think, of course, that the police want to make sure that nothing happens to me because certainly they would not look very good if that happened.
So is that the motivation for you to go so public, to protect yourself, or is this to promote your book someday if you get it back and can write it?
My book is finally finished. The police confiscated the original manuscript, and of course that's why I went to prison, was for writing that book. But the book is not out yet, so all the publicity that I've had does not help me sell my book because I haven't got a product yet. It's just simply to stay alive.
I was a prostitute, a young prostitute. And my question for you is, how would you tell your children?
Well, I don't have any, but what I would tell them, the same as my young brothers and sisters when they were younger, that when they become of age, when they are an adult, whatever life choices they wish to make, as long as they don't use force, the threat of force, fraud, or coercion against other people, that is their choice. I just simply hope that whatever business they go into, that they do the best that they can at it, and always look at their decision as something that they made, and be proud of their decision, as I am of mine.
Are you proud of the time you spent as a prostitute?
No, I'm not. It was very devastating for me. I got into drugs. And I'm also from Genesis, and I'm getting help for my problems.
And what motivated you originally, the drugs?
No, it wasn't just the drugs. I was also sexually abused as a child. And I was very ashamed of myself, and I didn't have any self-esteem, and I didn't care for myself. And things have changed.
Obviously, things have changed if you're able to stand up here today and in front of all of these people state your views like that. We are going to be taking another break here, and we will be right back in just a moment to continue the program.
I thought it was a lie. Who can make glasses in an hour?
I was kind of suspicious.
It may seem hard to believe, but you really can get quality eyeglasses in about an hour at LensCrafters. Our in-house laboratories can custom grind your exact prescription in about an hour. Listen.
I had my glasses in less than an hour.
Inside of 45 minutes, when I got my glasses and could see, I was flabbergasted.
LensCrafters, 3 locations, including Burnsville Mall, Southdale Mall, and Lomans Plaza.
Without qualified machinists, our world would be a different place. There would be no cars, no buildings, no airplanes. At Anoka Votech, you can train to be a skilled production machinist. As a machinist, you will produce intricate metal parts for the machinery that helps keep America working. Call Anoka VTI at 427-1880 to start your career as a qualified machinist today.
Take a day off, spend it just by yourself, and try out Estee Lauder's gift collection. Yours with any Estee Lauder purchase of $10 or more, filled with makeup, fragrance, and treatment products, including white linen parfum spray and Renutriv lipstick with a brush. It's just the special treatment you needed, and Estee Lauder just knew it. This Estee Lauder gift is yours through April 18th at Dayton's Cosmetics.
Budget Power, the home improvement expert, brings you store-wide savings during the Spring Fix-Up Sale. Relax in the soothing luxury of a portable hot spring spa. Swirling water set to your desired temperature will surround and caress you. Save on our huge selection of flush ceiling lights. Sparkling clear beveled glass with warm brass accents will enhance many areas of your home. Kincaid tub and shower doors are all on sale. From space-saving neo angles, mirrored doors, designer glass, and mirrored tri-panels, save more during the Spring Fix-Up Sale at Budget Power.
Penthouse Magazine with Norma Jean's story coming out tomorrow, and also Good Girls Gone Bad, Susan Nadler's book, which is just hitting the bookstands now with experiences of herself and many other women who have found that they entered a life of crime. You had a question.
Yes. I find it interesting with Norma that she was a sexual abuse victim, and dealing with prostitutes, I've dealt with prostitutes for about the last 5-6 years. And that the high percentage of women who have been sexually abused, prostitutes who have been sexually abused, not necessarily that they get involved in prostitution, but that 90% of prostitutes have been sexually abused, and that same kind of needs are getting met in your profession.
Well, that may be true, but how about maybe 90% of traffic officers, female traffic officers, have been sexually abused too? We can't say that that's what causes them to go into traffic officer work.
I have a question for Norma Jean. I don't see how you can say you were nurturing people and feeling good about it when that's all you were doing was getting used.
Well, see, I didn't feel that way, and certainly if a woman feels that way, she ought not to be in that profession. But I did not feel used. I felt used when the cops had sex with me and didn't pay me or didn't even let me have an orgasm.
Hotel accommodations and dining provided by the Radisson University Hotel, 615 Washington Avenue Southeast on the University of Minnesota East Bank campus. Henderson chauffeured Cadillacs provide limousine transportation for the guest of Twin Cities Live. Henderson's offers the largest selection of color, style, and service in the 5-state area. Bob Bruce's wardrobe is provided by Justers. Hair and makeup provided by Take 5, 504 North 1st Avenue in the Butler Building.
Susan, how she thought her father might have made a difference when she was younger for her turning into that. She said she was trying to get her father's attention.
Well, I want to say that I don't blame anything that happened on my parents at all, because then they could blame it on their parents and then it goes all the way back. I take full responsibility for everything that I did. And if I wanted my father's attention and wasn't getting it, you know, it was because he was working so hard to try to support us. I take full responsibility for what I did, and all the women in my book are totally self-motivating. None of them were coerced into their actions by their family.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, the two of you, and thank you, all of you in the audience. Very nice job today. Who's got other questions?
Globe College of Business.
Being at Globe has
better super